Story 1. It depends on the setting, and dosage, but I have taken strong tablets on a deserted island and felt like I lived an entire lifetime in a day, stumbling around and experiencing intense sensations. You don't just hallucinate. Rather, your whole perception of reality bends, and the most fantastical patterns, colors, and shapes emerge. Everything comes alive, time becomes meaningless, and you can feel like you are one with the entire cosmos, in tune with the vibration of the planet and the whisper of the wind. Primitive forms and patterns emerge from the landscape and clouds. Your sense of self dissolves and melts into the world, making it almost like living in a waking dream at times. On the other hand, I have taken it at parties or in the city, and it can be an entirely different experience, sometimes anxiety-inducing. I think nature makes for the best experiences. It also tends to be one of the longest days of your life. Story 2. I felt a little clammy. I was thinking about many different things while also unable to form any rational thoughts. I couldn't connect my PlayStation 4 at the time. I couldn't figure out how to plug it in. But when my friend connected it for me and I started playing Guitar Hero, that was the best I have ever played. LSD is strange. Story 3. There is no real way to describe it. I would ignore any attempts to do so and decide whether you want to experience it or not. I believe it is worth it. Story 4. Honestly, it made me feel like a kid again and allowed me to express my thoughts without shame. The colors are vivid, and everything feels so silly. My husband and I still quote things we said years ago. Story 5. It depends on how much you take. I have done microdoses that were wonderful. You feel as if the sun is shining out of you, and you speak the language of the universe. Story 6. Maybe it's because I took 3 tablets, but it felt very sort of manic. Everything was really speedy. I kept interrupting my fiancé because I thought I knew what he was going to say already. I didn't sleep for about 24 hours. I very much prefer magic mushrooms. 7 grams of mushrooms did not affect me in nearly the same way. Story 7. A more scientific explanation that may help give you insight into the varied and sometimes confusing descriptions of experiences, ranging from spiritual to anxiety-inducing, can be likened to opening the tap of a hose. In our everyday lives, we utilize our 5 senses: smell, sight, taste, touch, and sound. Psychedelic compounds like LSD can widen this tap, transforming your experience from merely sipping water to being overwhelmed by a torrent, as if millions of gallons are rushing toward you every second. We interpret the world and our experiences through these 5 senses, but we often do not focus completely on any one of them. For example, when you take a walk down the street, you might see a bird or talk to someone who walks past you. But do you notice every single sound or sight around you? Not at all. Your attention is on the conversation. Your brain naturally tunes out distractions, like a bird chirping 100 feet away or the sound of the wind blowing leaves. You cannot experience every detail of the myriad events occurring simultaneously. Your brain filters out about 99% of sensory information to allow you to engage fully in a conversation without distraction. Now, if you try a psychedelic, depending on the dosage, the tap to this sensory information opens wider. Your brain struggles to filter all this incoming information effectively since it is inundated. As a result, you may find it increasingly challenging to maintain a train of thought, as colors become more vibrant and sounds, like those of birds, wind, creaking branches, and passing cars, demand your attention. Confusion may set in as your focus is repeatedly pulled away. You might become deeply immersed in a sensory experience that can be either overwhelming or peaceful, depending on your environment and mindset. In a pleasant natural setting, you may feel connected to the world, appreciating the beauty of the sounds, smells, and sensations. Conversely, in a bustling city, you might feel isolated or uncomfortable due to the lack of connection with your surroundings and the frantic pace of others. In either case, you might find yourself stepping away from your ego and what you think you should be doing, immersing in the moment, or feeling overpowered and confused, leading to discomfort and questioning whether others notice your disconnection from social norms. Now imagine being in this state for 8 to 16 hours without the ability to turn it off. The experience can be intense and come in waves. Common advice suggests engaging in such experiences in natural settings where you feel comfortable, surrounded by trusted friends who are non-judgmental. It is also recommended to avoid making grand plans, as attention may wander significantly, impairing your ability to drive, use rideshare services, or follow directions, which may hinder your ability to find a safe space. Many find this experience to be beautiful and informative when approached responsibly. However, those who are mentally troubled or have psychiatric conditions may find it can lead to negative reflections on memories. While LSD is not commonly used in therapy, psilocybin mushrooms and ketamine are being researched and prescribed under professional supervision in certain countries. Regardless of your choices, prioritize safety and responsibility. Story 8. I wouldn't describe it as a feeling, but as an experience. It was like I forgot what my senses were, and I was rediscovering them. Time was not linear. When I took it, the time was 5:30 p.m., and we were playing cards. We asked each other if we felt anything yet, and we were all disappointed because nothing happened. The next thing we knew, it was 1 a.m., and we were all holding cards with strange symbols, shapes, and colors that we didn't understand. We knew we were playing a game, but could not remember what the game was. We recognized we were looking at numbers, but didn't understand them. At the time, we thought it was funny, but I was afraid to ever try it again. Story 9. Realistic acid visuals. Story 10. Never had a bad trip. You feel like all the filters in your mind are opened up. You see unusual ripples in your vision. You feel like things are moving in the corners of your sight. Your skin is super sensitive in a strange way. It's as if you could spend an hour lightly touching your arm hairs. Audio has an echo-like quality, similar to the ripples in your vision. If you pay attention, sounds seem normal, but once you stop focusing, things start to stutter. Your vision becomes intense. Go outside and look at the stars. It's incredible. It also changes your thinking. It feels like it rewires your brain, and ideas you had been struggling with now have a clear path, as if you crammed 10 days worth of thinking into 10 hours. The aftermath is quite difficult. For me, only a Chinese buffet helped, along with plenty of sleep. Most of my friends were completely fine with it. One friend, though, lost his mind. He confronted some issues he wasn't ready to deal with. He had to go into a mental health facility for a few days. However, he resolved those issues. He transformed from a lackluster stoner kid who was ready to drop out into someone who quit cannabis and earned an advanced science degree. It was one significant challenge, though. Story 11. I've done it 7 times, and if someone beside me was on it, I would have no reference for what their experience is like. It's a completely different manner of consciousness. Sure, I can describe fractaling and kaleidoscoping textures, but you might as well explain the color blue to a blind person. Story 12. It is difficult to put into words. It is as if the line between reality and imagination becomes blurred. Your consciousness logically registers something, but your subconscious begins to warp and shift it into something else. I believe much of the experience relates to your current mental state. I personally enjoy lysergic acid diethylamide. However, I advise not to treat it lightly. Story 13. First part, major laughter until your cheeks hurt. About an hour of hilarity. Second part, mellow and harmonious. You begin to understand why things are the way they are. Cool visuals and moving patterns for 5 to 6 hours. Third part, a bit wired for a couple of hours. I've done this many times, and the setting and vibe are key. It shouldn't be done in public, and mixing with alcohol only lessens the experience. Overall, good times. Story 14, electric nerves, tingling brains, dimensional shifting. Cross-consciousness, illuminated breaths. Progression of mind. Sometimes it can feel like the best day of your life. Other times it is a hell you cannot escape. Story 15. You may feel a little nauseous at the beginning, followed by feelings of strangeness and nervousness. After about 2 hours, you may start seeing tracers and geometric shapes everywhere, along with many eyes in your peripheral vision. Trees appear to dance, and colors have heightened contrast. Music becomes incredible. If you listen to good music with quality headphones and close your eyes, You begin to create your own textures and visuals in your mind. About 3 to 4 hours in, I personally start reflecting on my loved ones and how I can improve myself and life for them. Sometimes I even cry. Between 5 to 6 hours in, you start to become accustomed to the feeling. From 6 to 8 hours in, your thoughts and speech become much clearer and faster. I often play the drums or my guitars effortlessly during this time. The last 8 to 12 hours usually bring a feeling of returning to reality, and you realize you have just experienced an extraordinary time. This is just one of the many experiences that LSD can offer. The experience varies with friends and the environment, or if you choose to be alone. If you are an adult with responsibilities, ensure you dedicate an entire day to it and complete any necessary tasks beforehand so nothing disrupts your journey. Personally, I enjoy solo trips or hiking experiences with friends. Exploring a new place while on LSD with friends feels like a movie, as if everything is happening for a reason and should unfold as it does. I definitely recommend it. Story 16. It feels like a mix of ecstasy and mushrooms. It's stimulating but also has a trippy quality that is hard to explain. I hesitate to recommend it, but I had only good experiences when I tried it years ago, except for one occasion when I convinced myself that I had forgotten how to talk and ended up feeling uneasy for about an hour. Story 17. I have always heard the term LSD proves that God has a sense of humor. It wasn't until I took it that I realized how true that statement is. Acid is what opens the door to the inner workings of your most sacred being. You may enter a trip with doubts about who you are and what you are doing, and come out with a completely clean slate. It's like the detox spa in Rick and Morty. If anyone has seen that episode, all the toxins are filtered out simultaneously, along with moments of pure euphoria you forgot you ever felt. Many people feel like a child again. They forget the harsh adult world that has molded them into something they're not and remember what it was like to have a mind of pure egolessness. A mind that didn't judge or want to be judged. A fragile mind that could take something as simple as a song and harmonize the lyrics with how you live your life as an individual among a whole. I think Sting put it best when he said, "It made me think outside the box and realize the box is just a construct I had created." He also said, "It taught me that the core of all religious ideology should be, let me treat others the way I want to be treated myself." I think that sums it up perfectly. Story 18. Psychoactive substances have different effects on different people, so it's impossible to say exactly how any one individual will respond. In my experience, the most general thing I can say is as follows. People get very hung up on the hallucination aspect of psychedelics, especially if they haven't tried them or are telling others about them. People love to embellish and make things seem fantastical. Hallucinations are absolutely real and possible, but in my opinion, that kind of misses what's happening at the root. You constantly receive a lot of stimuli in your day-to-day life. Your brain consciously filters a lot of this information out to help you focus on specific things or achieve certain goals. It is my experience that psychedelics tend to remove some of this conscious filtering and allow your mind to experience a more unfiltered perspective. Think of when you were a child or consider a young child. The awe-inspiring nature of a rattle to a baby is remarkable. To a baby, the moving colors and sounds of something as simple as that can completely captivate them. Everything is new and interesting to them because their brain since people love to describe physical observations, I'll provide a more realistic example than seeing elves running around your living room. If you were to stare at a white painted wall, you might just see a white wall and ask yourself, why am I staring at this white wall? On a psychedelic substance, you might notice all these minor variations in the texture of the wall. The shadows created by the texture will seem brilliant and interesting. It might even appear as if the wall is breathing or moving slightly. This is the result of the relaxation of your filtering mechanism. This experience extends beyond just the visual. The same analogy applies to your perspective of the world. Have you ever noticed how kids are naturally more inclined to share and be inclusive? Or why you have to tell children not to take candy from strangers or get in their vans? The filtering mechanism you've developed based on your experiences tells you, this person isn't safe, or I don't want to spend my tax money paying for that person's needs. I want it to provide for my needs. Most people I know who have taken psychedelics describe a feeling of oneness, or increased connection with others. Once again, this is an example of the filtering mechanism relaxing. Is this real? Is this what's actually happening? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that question can even be answered. But I hope you have a slightly clearer picture of what it feels like to take a psychedelic substance. Not mentioned are the lack of appetite, lack of awareness of time, multiple peak episodes, looping, and other aspects of the experience. But at its core, the dampening of the filtering mechanism is the most critical part of the experience, at least for me. Story 19. Have you ever had alcohol? It's not the same. Have you ever smoked cannabis? Cannabis doesn't have the same effect as alcohol at all. Have you ever used amphetamines? Ecstasy? They are not like alcohol or cannabis. They elicit a totally different feeling. After taking lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD, I would categorize alcohol, amphetamines, cannabis, and ecstasy on one side, with LSD on the other. They all feel different, but LSD is on another level entirely. To be fair, the few times I took LSD, no trip was like the others. You should try it. It's enjoyable and surprisingly safe to use. But don't just take one casually. Take your time, read some information, find a safe place, and only do it when your mind is clear. After taking it, you will be out for 12 to 24 hours, so avoid doing it on a Sunday evening. Find a safe time and a safe space and go for it. Something else. Story 20. It is the only thing that makes me feel good about having a body. It may sound strange, but my body often feels like a burden that I have to nourish and look after. The only time I felt good about living in it was when I experienced a heightened state of awareness. Story 21. It depends on your intake and mental condition at the time. This is not something to use for partying or seeing pretty colors. While it could have that effect, it is meant to elevate your subconscious mind, bringing forth all that you are dealing with to find a harmonious balance within yourself. It is a tool to help you better understand who you are and how you fit into this complex tapestry of life. Good luck. Story 22. Okay, I feel like people are explaining it in a strange way, so I will try to break it down. It comes in waves. I would say there are two significant waves. I take an edible to maintain the experience. The onset feels intense. It's good to rest and lie down. I can feel it seep in, which feels typical for drug experiences. The visuals can be quite surreal, like objects liquefying and warping. For example, when I look at the ground, I might see rug patterns. The more I take, the more things begin to fragment, creating a grid-like effect. My thoughts can race, allowing me to view my life from a broader perspective. I like to imagine looking at my life like a dollhouse, rather than being confined to one emotional room. I can understand my feelings better and process things more quickly. I have used it to help organize my life afterward. Time feels like it slows down. I can almost experience time between seconds. Once, while in the desert, I perceived each moment as a frame, like a picture from a storybook. In summary, visually, things become unusual, I think beautiful. But I prefer to ensure my environment is clean and my legs are shaven before a trip. Time slows down. It comes in waves. You can gain a broader perspective on your life. Always test substances. Safe LSD is not harmful, doesn't last forever, and isn't truly addictive. If you know it's pure, you don't need to panic during a trip. Lastly, as my friend advised, if you ever find yourself needing something while tripping, it's always a good idea to have water on hand. Story 23. A near-complete loss of deductive reasoning allows your least sensible ideas to suddenly reveal the secrets of the universe to you and your friends. Then it wears off and you can't understand why your incredible revelations no longer make sense. Story 24. I will never touch that substance again. They say, you just had a bad experience. No, there are bad experiences, and then there are truly traumatizing experiences where you feel trapped in a 16-hour nightmare. It wasn't just me. My girlfriend had the same terrifying experience. Perhaps it was contaminated acid. If it had been our first experience, we might have lost our minds. We just had to endure it. Never again. Story 25. It is impossible to explain, But the best way to describe what psychedelics are like is that it feels like being blind your whole life and then suddenly being able to see again. They change your brain chemistry and cause areas of the brain that normally wouldn't communicate to interact together, allowing you to perceive and feel things you never would have been able to otherwise. You will see the world with an extra dimension, noticing the beauty and intricacy in mundane, everyday objects and aspects of life that will give you a newfound appreciation and respect for the world. You may stare at the wall and see something so beautiful that it brings you to tears. It is as if your brain resets, and you get to experience the world through the eyes of a newborn baby seeing it for the first time. Story 26. Setting: 1976. I'm at home alone, and I dropped some acid. Once I started feeling the effects, I thought to myself that I feel strange. What if someone comes to the door? They will surely know that I'm acting unusual. So, I leave the lights off and pretend no one is home. Night falls, and it starts getting dark outside, and inside too, since I left the lights off. I sit on my couch in the dark and close my eyes for just a few minutes. Then I open them and look at my watch. 5 hours have gone by in a matter of minutes. I'm still feeling strange, but at least nobody knocked on the door, so nobody knows. That was probably about the 20th time I dropped acid, but definitely the last time. Other previous experiences were quite a bit more enjoyable than that last one. Story 27. There is no point in describing it. The closest reference I can make is to Alice in Wonderland. Everything becomes unusual, which is a lot of fun if you are not afraid of strange things. Could be a bad experience if you are scared of them. Story 28. You can't think straight. Things start moving that shouldn't be moving, and you feel a bit nauseous. It is more fun than it sounds, but less fun than it is made out to be. Your experience may vary. Story 29. The Central Intelligence Agency tested lysergic acid diethylamide for its potential as a mind control drug and found that it had the opposite effect. It can help you overcome psychological barriers and find patterns in chaos. Alternatively, you may simply experience vivid visuals and find everything amusing. Story 30. It's like you've lived in a house for 40 years, and suddenly you discover a door leading to an entirely new floor that you never realized was there. Story 31. If you're in any way synesthetic to begin with, it's very intense even at mild doses. Be ready for time distortion and vivid visuals. My partner during the pandemic and I showered together an hour into it, and I could feel every single drop of water hitting me. Watching them wrap a towel around their head afterwards looked like they had an enormous towel on their head. Do it in a safe space. You won't regret it, but be prepared for an adventure. Story 32. Imagine a kaleidoscope. Now imagine not being able to put it down. That's just how the world looks if you gaze in one direction too long. Now pair that feeling with bliss, sometimes, and strange existential thoughts about life and reality. Story 33. It depends on many factors. The batch, your environment, dosage, and your mental state as you settle into the experience. Personally, I have experienced effects ranging from visual distortion similar to having a few drinks to feeling like my entire body was flipped inside out, akin to an episode of Rick and Morty, to seeing entire galaxies created from a water spigot, seemingly destroyed as the drops hit the ground, and watching my thoughts floating in clouds, flopping and spinning around while feeling their motion, resulting in a massive headache after accidentally taking the wrong ones and dosing myself with double the intended amount. The substance I would compare it to the most is alcohol, with visual distortion, body lucidity, and the release of inhibition. The difference is that these feelings may amplify once or twice over a 6 to 12 hour span, depending on quality, and your mood can quickly shift from good to bad in an instant. Story 34. It was a strange experience. I tried it a few times in high school with my friends. We acted irresponsibly. I had 2 great trips and 3 very bad ones. It's unpredictable, but if you have a good trip, which is usually the case, it will definitely change you. It helped me appreciate the little things much more. We all enjoy nature, but you become captivated by every detail. Life feels tailored just for you, and you fit perfectly into this world. Suddenly, the world seems small, and you feel deeply connected to everything, like it's all one. It was simply amazing and truly beautiful. I got to listen to Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake and LSD by ASAP Rocky with these massive noise-canceling headphones. Everything was perfect, and I truly loved myself and everyone around me. I wanted to hug the entire world. As for the bad trips, there were a few. I experienced what some call ego death, which I can't fully explain, but time ceased to exist in my mind. All my thoughts connected, and every time I spoke, it felt like a profound realization about something that was ultimately nothing. It's pure delusion, and you feel quite unhinged and alone. You may feel like you need to go to a mental health facility. I honestly thought it would never end and that I would be unstable forever. We decided to take some extra tabs on my friend's birthday. Things went downhill fast, and I had no idea what was happening or where we were. My visuals were wild. I felt completely out of control. My friend ended up getting into a physical altercation with another friend's parents, and they had to restrain her while the rest of us stayed upstairs feeling extremely anxious. We got into serious trouble. It's quite a story, but some people harm themselves and others because of these experiences. Things can escalate quickly. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour for it to kick in, and when it does, it begins slowly, but soon you realize you're experiencing a profound trip. Still, I appreciate the good trips more than ever. Story 35. I have vivid memories of trying it, a feeling of excitement that reminded me of being a child on Christmas Eve. Ordinary things seemed astonishing. The streets were brighter, more vibrant, and unreal, like a film set. My thoughts sped up and became confused. I couldn't think clearly and had strange ideas, like thinking some electrical equipment was an idea generator. A ride in a police car felt incredibly smooth. Letters and numbers emerged from the cell walls. Footsteps sounded like liquid, and my father's eyes left green trails in the air. It was a mix of wonder and unreality. Story 36. After about 20 minutes of ingestion, you start to feel these little twinges of electricity. Things begin to appear bright, and your vision starts to focus. At about 40 minutes, your body may feel like your heart is racing, and everything is turned up to an extreme level. Depending on how much you have taken, you might start experiencing visuals where objects appear to breathe and move. It is often exaggerated when people claim to see fantastical things, like dragons making pancakes. However, LSD is a powerful and intense drug that requires a commitment, as you should not have any obligations for about 6 hours. Story 37. Depending on you and the dosage, I feel clammy, almost a bit anxious. However, once you're in it, that feeling kind of fades into the background. A bag of Starburst is my go-to snack that helped me through my experiences. Story 38. It has more of an edge than I prefer, and it takes a long time to wear off even when I'm tired and want to sleep. It is difficult to control and hard to let go. It is definitely an all-day endeavor in my opinion. The afterglow is wonderful, though, if you can maintain some energy to enjoy it. I recommend a relaxed, easygoing trip sitter who can manage any challenges that arise during the experience. Story 39. It truly made me realize that the universe has a creator. Many people do not like to talk about spirituality or religion, but it challenged my former atheistic beliefs. Story 40. Afterwards, you realize there are different ways to look at the living world. Eyesight becomes modified, as does breathing and touch. If you're not in the right mindset to accept that, then it is overwhelming. It's the unpredictable nature of drugs that can be disorienting. Story 41. The only thing comparable that I've tried is mushrooms. It's much more cerebral with no body high. The trip lasts longer, so be prepared. The build-up to the peak can be more intense. It was my favorite substance, which I don't use anymore, but I'm seriously reconsidering it. Story 42. Lyle Watson wrote in his book Supernature, in the chapter on hallucination, the most noticeable psychological effect is, as in sensory deprivation, one of slowing down time. Second hands on clocks seem hardly to move. This sort of eternal present is very much like a version of the way time can stand still in times of great personal danger. We have the capacity for producing this effect in emergencies, and lysergic acid diethylamide seems to carry it a stage further, but it is no longer concerned with personal survival. The separation between self and non-self, the old primeval haunt of the unconscious, soon disappears, and ego boundaries dissolve. Cohen states, "The thin overlay of reason gives way to reverie. Identity is submerged by oceanic feelings of unity, and seeing loses the conventional meanings imposed upon the object seen." It is important to realize that we normally perceive only what we can conceive. We fit sensations into our own view of the way things ought to be. The classic experiment of wearing glasses that invert everything proves this conclusively. Within a day or two, the brain makes corrections to the visual field, and these individuals see everything the right way up again. However, when the glasses are removed, the whole world is once again inverted. Thus, the world is seen not as it is, but as it ought to be. Part of the problem is that we receive so many sensations that we are forced to pick and choose, soon ending up with a carefully selected and very narrow view of reality. Lysergic acid diethylamide has the capacity to take the blinkers off and allow us to see things afresh, as though for the first time. In this condition, we can begin to reappreciate the sounds of colors, the scent of music, and the texture of mood. Bees, bats, and deep-sea squid, without our range of competing sensitivities and interests, do these things all the time. Story 43. I remember staring at a campfire for a long time. I was in awe, thinking deeply about the elements on Earth. Wind, water, and fire. Story 44. Honestly, I found it a bit tiring after a while since I couldn't control what I saw. Everything I looked at was constantly warping and changing, and even walking or just standing was a challenge because I felt like the ground was moving. I tried to watch a movie, but that didn't work because I couldn't make out what was happening on the screen. But the feeling was something else. I felt like the absolute center of the universe, with everything revolving around me, as if I was absorbing energy and could reflect on my own superiority to everything while thinking about how others seemed so inferior and insignificant for hours. That was pretty neat. Personally, I prefer MDMA because it also causes me to hallucinate, but in a much more controllable way. Like I look at a wall, and it starts changing into glowing, moving mandalas but stops once I look away. Story 45. I'm not sure that some of the responses here were made by people who actually took lysergic acid diethylamide. You might be able to find an article by Scientific American that explains how lysergic acid diethylamide works in the brain. Under lysergic acid diethylamide, sound and vision can be confused, so you can see music which sounds impossible. Inanimate objects like trees can seem alive in the sense that individual leaves may have faces and talk to you, and a small kitten may be perceived as a lion. Reality is completely distorted. It takes about an hour for the effects to come on when taken as a tablet. Walls begin to breathe and move in and out. When the experience is finishing, it's quite draining and tiring. It's a physically exhausting experience, especially if you take multiple doses at the same time, which I typically did. A lot of what is sold as lysergic acid diethylamide these days is not actual acid. Story 46. There is a tangible sense of awe when it first begins to arrive, and then you ride the wave, followed by a sadness as it departs. Story 47. Really wavy visually speaking, at a certain point your vision just turns into a smooth wave. It's quite calming. Don't try going to sleep while on acid or LSD, though you'll completely regret it. Story 48. The best trip I ever had was camping out to watch a meteor shower. I lay down and watched what seemed like hundreds per hour. I could actually hear them streaking across the sky. I had one of the best breakfasts I've ever had at a local diner on the way home the next morning. Story 49. Good and bad at the same time, like you are awake and asleep simultaneously, with your mind open to the cosmos, able to see through things. This can feel great and totally scary, everything all at once for 6 to 8 hours. Story 50. It is quite remarkable. Takes a while to kick in, but then it becomes euphoric and wild. I found myself in a bathroom, looking in the mirror and experiencing the sensation of aging and rejuvenation. You know that feeling when you're in a warehouse store and you see the latest television with vibrant and deep colors that completely captivates you? Well, everything transforms into that experience. Story 51. You become one with the universe and realize that you are conscious of everything that exists. This life is an illusion that separates us from being one. Story 52. It used to feel like euphoria. Now it accentuates my anxieties, so I stick to mushrooms. It affects everyone differently, and too much at once or one bad experience can change your perspective entirely. As with every psychoactive substance, be careful but have fun. Story 53. If you do it with friends. I know doing it solo is very different from having a shared experience. Story 54. I took a blotter once, and it must have been exposed to light or something because it was particularly weak. The floor was swaying side to side for a while, but that was all. Story 55. I lose my metacognition. It's very strange. The version of me left behind is quite different and somewhat foolish. Well, perhaps not much different from who I am. Story 56. It makes you hyperactive. Your mind just goes, and you stay up for a long time while experiencing vivid sensations. I sometimes use it to draw for extended periods. Yes, I am talking about lysergic acid diethylamide. Story 57. My biggest takeaway was becoming more informed about my mind's processing power. Considering every bit of sensory information my body receives at any moment can be overwhelming. Being able to focus on one sensation while other sensations compete for attention is challenging. All the neurons are firing simultaneously, creating a composite picture of reality. It's difficult to maintain any one feeling or sensation because the mind constantly reassembles it. Fascinating insights. Story 58. I took the highest dosage and it was a 12-hour trip. I had multiple feelings. Initially, I was very happy and full of hallucinations. We laughed a lot, even for no reason. After some time, it felt like we were full of energy and engaged in creative work at home. We decided to observe some pictures of Vincent van Gogh and Pablo Picasso. During the last moments of the trip, we entered a meditative state, and when I closed my eyes, I felt like I was talking to God. I also identified some flaws in my personality that I needed to correct, and that was a positive realization. Story 59. It was the first day I realized how much I loved playing the piano. At the risk of sounding vain, I am very good now, and the highlight of any day is sitting down and improvising entire songs from nothing. I can lose 3 hours in the blink of an eye playing the piano, and when I get up, my voice is hoarse. It's the strangest thing and one of the strongest sensations of flow I have ever experienced. I attribute my current ability to my experiences. Story 60. It is not something I can easily describe. It is different every time, and the experiences I had cannot be articulated in a way that truly conveys what it is like unless someone tries it for themselves. Before using LSD, I read extensively about people's experiences and descriptions, but none of them matched my expectations. You just have to try it and see for yourself. Story 61. Acid felt like being an Alka-Seltzer tablet dissolving in water. I know that's not helpful, but that's how I felt. Story 62. Lysergic acid diethylamide can feel very different depending on the individual and the dosage. Common effects include intense visual distortions, enhanced colors, a warped sense of time, and significant changes in thoughts or emotions. Some individuals describe it as mind-expanding, while others may experience anxiety or confusion. It is unpredictable and can last 8 to 12 hours, so it should be approached with caution. Story 63. This is going to sound strange, but bear with me, and I will give you a rundown of what I have experienced. After taking the substance, I usually have a little bout of nerves, but it's mostly just the anticipation of it starting to take effect. I know it's beginning to kick in when I feel a slight disconnection from reality, which gradually increases and peaks at about 25 to 35%. A complete disconnection would be equivalent to losing touch with reality entirely. It feels as though reality exists, but it appears to be a facade. Within about 20 minutes, the best way I can describe it is that I can feel cellular division happening all over my body simultaneously. This sensation lasts only a few seconds at most. Let me describe it in a bit more detail, as I cannot find an accurate visual representation of what I want to convey. Picture an ordinary circle. Now grasp the top and bottom of the circle with your thumb and index finger of each hand. Imagine a hockey puck lying flat on the ice. If you divide it into 4 quarters, you will have one thumb and finger on the rim of each quarter. Now imagine that you are twisting the circle apart, one hand turning counterclockwise and the other hand turning clockwise, stretching each part away from the other. It begins to look like two teardrops, but the top one is upside down, and then they split into two separate circles. That is exactly what I feel happening throughout my body, all at once. I can literally feel my whole body experiencing this sensation, and it is as if I should have an exact duplicate of myself sitting right next to me. Then, I feel a tingle running down my spine, which I assume is related to the spinal fluid reacting to the substance, blurring the lines between senses. Immediately afterward, I notice a slight metallic taste in my mouth and begin to perceive all the individual taste buds on my tongue moving independently as I try to adjust to the metallic flavor. Soon after, the visuals begin. I often see something inanimate breathing, like a plant swaying, or visuals on a television screen going wild and moving in a crazy rhythmic pattern, even when it is paused. Each time I have used this substance, I have had a completely different experience. One time, I was wrapped up in a sleeping bag, lying on a bench in a friend's garden, experiencing synesthesia, where the senses overlap, and I tasted different stars just by looking at them. Another time, I was deeply focused, engaged in profound conversations about the nature of reality, and noticed that people left trails behind them as they moved. The last time, I could see my heartbeat through my own eyes on the surfaces of all objects. When I looked at a bookshelf, with each beat of my heart, I saw a pulse around the edges and across the shelves, resembling a heart monitor in a hospital. I have always appreciated the aftermath of taking psychedelics. It feels like a partial ego death that allows you to temporarily remove your constraints and reflect on your life choices from an unbiased perspective. You gain undeniable clarity about what is going wrong in your life, which clears the way for you to see the steps you need to take to improve your situation. Story 64. Well, I started hallucinating that my wife and I were getting married in heaven. All the angels were standing right next to us, and God was conducting the ceremony, telling us we were now husband and wife. The feeling? I had never felt happier. You could actually feel happiness in every cell of your body. I don't know how to describe it better. It was as if every cell was happy and smiling. Keep in mind, all of this happened while Four Seasons by Vivaldi was playing on repeat in the background as I put on a sleep mask, turned off the light, turned on the music, lay down in my bed, and let the experience guide me. Story 65. I received many positive responses here. However, it's a cautionary tale. I was taking acid occasionally for about 4 or 5 years. Then, at a festival, I unknowingly took what could be some of the strongest acid ever. I completely dissociated from my body and mind and apparently tried to walk into a lake because I thought I was dead. Someone gave me a Xanax to end the trip, and all I remember is repeatedly asking if this was real life. I never really experimented much after that. The lack of control over my mind and body was an experience I had never encountered before. Story 66. It is totally amazing if you have a good trip and awful if you have a bad trip. I have experienced both. I would always advise against taking LSD because it can be very dangerous. Story 67. Honestly, it's really hard to explain to someone who has never tried it. It's something you feel with your entire body, and it truly feels like nothing you have ever experienced. You feel as though the world around you comes to life. Paintings, trees, clouds, plants, and even the walls can seem like they are breathing. Sometimes your mind feels like it is racing, and thoughts come and go in a matter of seconds. Of course, it depends on the dosage, but overall, when done under the right circumstances and with the right people, it can be a very magical experience. Story 68. Check my posts to see it. I have devoted my life to making replications of these states. However, one must remember they are highly subjective and dependent on narrative and context. The setting significantly changes the experience, making it challenging to describe in a way that would fully represent everyone's experience. Story 69. Coming on can be unsettling. I enjoy smoking cannabis because it helps with the transition. After a few hours, you reach the peak, which is when the most visuals and feelings occur. Everything can look beautiful, especially outdoors, which is my preference. Walking around is amazing. I remember one time in high school when I was tripping and walking through the neighborhood, noticing all the patterns in the lawns. There was a moment when I was in a field during the rain, and I could see a path where it wasn't raining. The clouds looked like they were readable, but the letters were always split in the middle, making them indecipherable. I learned to meditate while using psychedelics. After taking a strong dose, I focused on a brass doorknob for a long time, and it helped me. Eventually, everything else disappeared except for the knob. When I practice this without psychedelics, I can make a room seem to disappear, leaving a shiny spot in the middle. This was a skill I gained, but anyone can do it. Just pick a spot and think of absolutely nothing. I remember tripping in the desert, sweat pouring off me, feeling as though every sense was heightened. Psychedelics are hard to describe but impossible to forget. Story 70. You can take a small dose and feel great. However, taking a larger amount may lead to an unpleasant experience that lasts a long time. It is important to have the right environment. Story 71. Acid goes through stages. The onset is usually full of laughter and euphoria. Everything feels lighter and funnier. Then comes a strange body disconnection. You know it is your body, but that natural sense of being fully in it fades, like you are piloting it from a distance. People expect wild visuals because of movies, but unless you take a high dose, it is usually more subtle. Colors become vivid, and surfaces gently move, kind of like those magic eye books. The bigger effect is how your thoughts and senses shift. Touching sand or feeling the wind can feel like an entirely new sensation. Real-life issues either vanish or feel way too intense. Some media is overwhelming. Drama comedies like Knocked Up felt too much, but something like The Burbs was just right. Even when you think it is wearing off, it lingers. Sleep does not come easy. Closing your eyes brings patterns, faces, and motion. The come down feels rough. Tight stomach, dizziness, mental exhaustion, and still seeing leftover visuals. Story 72. You can feel every pore in your body breathe. You can see the health or disease of every person you encounter. I once looked up Fifth Avenue in New York City and could see all the way to Central Park. The avenue appeared as rolling waves, like something out of a dream. You can see through your skin. Every surface is vibrating, moving with patterns, intense giggles, and childlike emotions. Story 73. No matter what type of experience you have, one thing is for sure, it will not be subtle. In my experience, its intensity is almost unmanageable at times and completely overwhelming at others. I had a curious onlooker asking me to describe it, and all I could muster in between giggles was a little much. I just kept repeating that. Story 74. The setting is very important. I chose to be outside in a fenced backyard on a nice day, and it was amazing. I felt like my perception started bending. Looking at the tree branches, blades of grass, and clouds revealed interconnected patterns. Everything felt connected, and I experienced a sense of euphoria and understanding about everything in myself. All personal problems and worries seemed to dissolve during this experience. I could feel sound. Soft textures felt incredible. The hot tub was also a unique experience. If you are going to use LSD, it is a good idea to have someone with you who is not under the influence to keep an eye on you. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.